Yo guys, Jin here, and today I'm going to give my quick rating / opinion on what the best and worst classes are in Season 1 of Diablo 4 and why. Before we get into the actual tier list, I will just explain my rating system. So casual fun, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how much fun I think a casual player will have playing the class, and Nightmare Dungeon pushing, the class's ability to do progressively higher tier Nightmare Dungeons, Uber Lilith, class's ability to fight and kill Uber Lilith. Leveling from 1 to 50, the ease of leveling from 1 to 50, same for 51 to 100. Mobility, the class's ability to get around when in combat and also when out of combat. Face tanking, the class's ability to take hits from monsters and Diablo 4's bullet hell. And lastly, speed clears, which is the class's ability to clear lower tier Nightmare Dungeons, overworld events, and hell tides. So with that out of the way, let's get to the classes. So coming in at rank 1, we have the Rogue. I chose a Rogue for this season since it was the one class I didn't really try yet, and I have to say this class is hella fun. Barrage is awesome, Rapid Fire is awesome, and of course Twisting Blades is insanely awesome. Can't really go wrong with the Rogue, still pumps out insane damage post-patch. It's also great for casual fun, has a really nice playstyle whether you go for ranged or melee. You don't actually feel that squishy either, especially with the amount of dashes, shrouds, conceal, and shadow steps you can use to get out of danger. The leveling just on a whole has been a highly enjoyable experience, and it gets even better when you've got all the points to play with. As for the endgame, Rogues still pump out tremendous damage and can speed farm, no problem. Steal down Uber Lilith, no problem, and push Nightmare Dungeons really well as well. You're a little squishy when you do randomly just tank a hit, but like I said, your insane mobility makes up for that, and then some. For endgame builds, I'd definitely recommend Twisting Blades, although Barrage and Death Trap builds are nice as well. Rapid Fire isn't too bad either. As for leveling up, a Twisting Blades build or a Barrage build seem to work the best, at least for me. So that's it for the Rogue. Next up is our rank 2 class, the Druid. I think this class is just beastly at endgame. See what I did there? Because it's like shapeshifting stuff. Anyway, if this was only an endgame list, I'd place the Druid in the top slot. It's just a solid class for that content, whether it's pushing Nightmare Dungeons, speed clearing for that gear, or killing that mother Lilith, you'll pretty much be all set. The Druid also remains relatively tanky even in the new patch, so comboing that with the incredible damage you can push out, I'd highly recommend playing this class if endgame content playing is your goal. The main downside of the Druid is, of course, the leveling and finding key items and aspects to bring the build fully online. Other than that, you are solid. As I mentioned, great tankiness, great damage, great clearing, so definitely worth the second spot on the list. As for endgame building, I would recommend using a Lightning Storm build or a Tornado Wolf build. And for leveling up, I would go with Pulverize or Landslide for the build. So next up, rank 3, in the middle of the pack, we have the Necromancer. Bone Spears were hella broken before the patch. Now they do quite a bit less damage, so they're just hella insanely good instead. As even with the less damage, it's still more than enough to bone Lilith to death and then some. As for Nightmare Dungeon pushing, they're not as good as the first 2 ranked classes, but they still get by more than okay. Speed clearing isn't too bad either, but it's the same with their pushing, not quite as fast as the Rogue and Druid. The playstyle to me was pretty fun. I did a lot of blood builds and minion builds, especially when leveling up, but Bone Spear of course gets the job done in pretty much any situation. The main concern for a Necromancer is just face tanking things, especially now that defenses have been reduced, as this class isn't exactly the most mobile, but outside of that, pretty solid. Can do all of the content, no real issues there, can level up fine, can kill Lilith, can push dungeons if you want to, speed clears alright. That's pretty much it for Necro. Not much to say about it, besides that I do hope they add some sort of poison bone or blood poison kind of hybrid stuff. I think that'd be pretty cool. But maybe one day in season 58 when they introduce more stash space. As for the Necromancer's builds, for endgame I'd go with the Bone Spear of course, or if you're looking for something else, I'd probably recommend the Infinimist build. As for leveling up, I'd go with Bone Spear if you just want speed, but watching a minion army fight for you and spearing / cursing at your enemies is hella fun as well. So next to last we have the Sorcerer / Sorceress, everyone's favourite gimped class. They were hella fun in almost all areas, but now the fun is over. Somewhat. If you're looking for endgame pushing and Lilith destruction, then it's kind of a little bit over. For the casual player though, the Source still has things going for it. They can speed clear insanely fast, playstyle's nice and quick, it's really fun, leveling experience is just awesome and fast, and you also have a decent amount of builds to work with. So basically 1 to 100, just leveling up, going through the game, doing things, you're going to have like no issues there. Going to have no issues with speed clearing, lower tier nightmare dungeons, doing hell tides and overworld events like that. But just basically when it comes to pushing nightmare dungeons and Uber Lilith, definitely not going to be as much of a cakewalk as pre-season. So good luck involving every time a higher tier monster breathes on you, and enjoy the bullet hell known as Uber Lilith. On the plus side, resistances will work in an upcoming season, so you've got that going for you. Yay, I guess. TLDR, leveling and clearing, super fun. Endgame, not so fun. At least in my opinion. But for the builds, in the way of endgame, I would recommend Blizzard, Ice Shards, or Firewall. And as for leveling up, there's a whole plethora of builds for you to work with, but I would recommend, for speed purposes, Chain Lightning, Firewall, or Ice Shards. So here we are at last. Last but not least. Just kidding, it's least, very least, rank 5, the end, dead last. The class that went from Hammer of the Ancients to nerf hammered to death and beyond. The Barbarian. So basically, if you like experiencing pain, despair, anguish, agony, destruction firsthand happening to you, this class is right up your alley. All kidding aside, the Barbarian for me is still a fun class to play, but it just doesn't have the same power as the others, especially since patch 1.10a. Sure, Hammer of the Ancients had unintended interactions, it was basically bugged, but fixing that bug left Barbarians without any other real way to compensate for that massive damage loss. It was so much fun for Barb players. But who knows, maybe a brand new, amazing, awesome Uber Lilith bashing build appears later this season, or some helpful buffs come in. But besides all that, the patch also made classes squishier, as I mentioned, as well as reducing vuln damage, which also nerfed the Hoda build pretty bad since you kind of had to rely on applying vuln and smashing face within that short window of time, and then running around like a maniac waiting for the next window. And keeping the uptime during the Lilith fight isn't exactly easy. Don't get me wrong though, it's still alright when leveling up with Rend or Hoda, but it's just not as quick in comparison to the classes above. For speed clearing though, you do still have your mobility in the way of your Rallying Cry and the amount of Unstoppable you can apply, which gives great movement speed uptime, and just the way you build in general helps a lot with that. So in this situation, Hammer of the Ancients and Whirlwind can still get the job done relatively well, but overall though, Barbarian just doesn't hit how it used to. It's quite a long fall that they've had during the preseason, as they were one of, if not the strongest class on the game's release, which is why they've also fallen to the bottom of this list. So quick recap, Uber Lilith, not so great, Nightmare Dungeon pushing, not too great either, leveling up, it's kind of a slow push through, but it's not too bad, I guess. Mobility, not bad either. Clearing the overworld and speed clearing, quite good. So lower tier nightmare dungeons and helltide should be all good, all fine. And you're also relatively tanky, probably right up there with the Druid in the amount of pure damage you can face tank and live. So now let's get to the builds. For endgame I would still recommend Hoda, and I would still also recommend Whirlwind. For leveling, I'd recommend the same thing I would always recommend, the Rend build, just like before, but Hammer of the Ancients is not too bad either, and 51 to 100 you could also do a Whirlwind build, and that would be fine as well. So that wraps up my class rankings / tier list entering into Season 1 of Diablo 4. Here's an overview and scoring of all the classes. Let me know what you guys think about the classes and what you would change in regards to balancing them, or balancing the monsters and bosses, or anything like that down in the comments below. Hope you guys have a good time if you do play the season, and good luck killing those demons if you do. If you liked the video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. It helps a lot. See you in the next one. Bye!